All right, I think we could probably start around now. Thank you for taking the wait, Meg. And yeah, first of all, I would just like to say if anybody does have any questions, feel free to just scan the QR code in the bottom right corner if you don't feel comfortable asking directly. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine if you just want to ask directly afterwards. And let me actually try to get this out of the way. There we go. All right, but yeah, well, thank you everybody for showing up. And there is a few people online as well. So hello to you guys as well. And I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Justin. I'm currently president of Moneythink. And today I'm excited to introduce Meg. And she's actually a CMU alumni. She was a Tepper student, and she's currently a senior product manager at Google. And she leads complex cross-functional teams critical to driving YouTube's global advertising revenue in the competitive social marketing space. And her career has been anything but linear, however, as she's worked in multiple different companies like PlayStation, Lockheed to start off, and just a lot of different sectors. And what I personally admire is that you've been able to move across all of these and been able to adapt through them. And without further ado, thank you for joining us, Meg.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. It's always a pleasure to connect with fellow Tartans, and especially at Tepper, which represents such a meaningful time in my life. Looking back over my career so far, many of the values I anchor on today came from my time in college and putting my heart into the work. I felt like there were a lot of expectations of what career paths were expected from CMU students, and I realized pretty quickly that to be true to myself, I needed to focus on my own unique passions and motivations. That focus has led me to make a lot of shifts in my career, but I've learned so much about what I enjoyed and almost more importantly, what I didn't enjoy with each of these experiences. Any change comes with risk, but there's also the risk of not getting stagnant in a role once you are no longer growing or learning from it. I learned that I get bored and demotivated pretty quickly once I know how to do something really well. My amazing mentors have always encouraged me to continually reassess what I'm getting out of my work and when it's time to shift responsibilities or consider other opportunities. Having the confidence, support from my partner, and honestly, the financial security to take those risks has been an incredible gift that I'm very grateful for. Anytime I've stepped into a new role or a project, I have to reset, which can be both exciting and scary. It's helpful to frame short and long term goals and ensure that they're aligned with your team. I tend to seek out easy wins right away, areas where I can make something better quickly and establish credibility and trust with my new team. Building real relationships with your stakeholders is critical for success and also a pretty fun challenge because every person has their own unique motivations, and figuring that out is a really nice challenge. Once relationships are strengthened, you then become that person that others think of to pull in for their most interesting work. And that's where the magic really happens. I've received so many wonderful pieces of advice over my career, but one that I thought of for today came from my father on a really tough day. And he reminded me that you don't work for a company, you work at a company. And I've really taken that to heart. You always have the agency and autonomy to control your own career, regardless of the environment or the situation that's around you. No one else will look out for you the same way that you will look out for yourself. And so it's critical that you prioritize yourself. That perspective has been really important while navigating my career choices and finding the best roles for myself. And I look forward to chatting more and answering your questions.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I could just start with a few baseline questions. So I guess first of all, since you did attend Tepper, what would you say like within Tepper, or just like what roles did you have during your time at CMU that really helped you like define your career and find out what you really liked?
Yeah, I actually was talking with a colleague here the other day about my experience in undergrad, and we kind of joke that no one knows what they really want to do when they're 18. In fact, like the role that I do today didn't exist when I was, back in college. But I do think I did have a really good sense of what my strengths and interests were, and those actually play out in my role today. So when I was at Tepper, we we were required to have like a concentration area, not a minor, which I think they've changed. And I couldn't actually decide between three different areas. I really liked international business. I really liked information systems. And one of my favorite classes was organizational behavior, like basically thinking through why people, are the way they are. And so I actually went to the undergrad dean at the time and said, I can't decide. Can I just do all three, like to self define what I want to do? And he was very supportive. So that's what I ended up doing. I took some extra classes in all three of those areas. And that's actually all three of those skills are parts that are really critical to my job today. I work in, I've worked at a lot of large international companies, and my colleagues tend to come from all over the world, regardless of where I'm sitting. So being able to understand their perspectives has been really critical, and capitalize on those amazing talents that they bring to the table. As a program manager, I really have to think about what's motivating people, what's helping this program move forward, and how am I going to lead this team towards our end result. So that really captures that organizational behavior. And obviously, a majority of my career has always been in tech. So being familiar with the technical architecture of our systems, while I'm certainly not the one coding them, being able to look at a diagram and understand what is going on has been really critical as well. So I think that experience of being able to explore those different areas in undergrad was really critical, and continues to serve me well today. In addition, I was involved in a sorority when I was in college, and that's actually something that I've continued to leverage as well. I am actually an active member in a sorority alumni group, so it's a really great outlet for me to get to know people, network, develop new skills with folks that I wouldn't necessarily interact with otherwise, and still stay close to a lot of the people that I met during my time in college. I was also a resident assistant and a community advisor during my time at Carnegie Mellon, in what was Doherty, which is no longer standing, unfortunately, but or maybe fortunately, it wasn't in great shape when I was there. But that was a really good experience to learn about leading a group, and what skills are needed and what you can do to really help bring a community together. And those are skills that I use in my job every day as a program manager, bringing my teams together. So I think there's a lot that I developed outside of the classroom, in addition to some of the technical skills I learned inside of the classroom that I use still today pretty frequently.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, three concentrations, that's quite the overachiever. We still currently have the concentration and it's along with our like a minor. So you have like both a minor and a concentration. And
Cool.
yeah, but that's great. And I guess second question, what would you say was your like key turning point? Like, did you have a key turning point within like what you want to do and just I guess stepping into like like a different area?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of key points or times when I've had to make decisions. I think one that was really interesting would be during the pandemic, beginning of the pandemic. I was working at Groupon, and it honestly wasn't going very great, but I was staying in the role because of some personal things that I had planned, and really loved the people I was working with and the job I was doing, but I could see that the company wasn't being very successful. I ended up getting laid off from that role at the beginning of the pandemic in like April of 2020. And I, had been through layoffs. I'd actually had to lay people off as part of my job. I had experienced that loss um, through other lenses, but never myself. And I think actually going through all those emotions of, why did this happen to me? Why aren't the things going the way I had planned? I had just gotten a promotion, so it was really felt jarring to have that experience. But I think it was also a blessing. One, I got to spend some more time with my family while we kind of sorted out what do we do next, that I probably wouldn't have taken otherwise, because I, would have been really focused on next steps in my career at the role I was in. And I really had some trade offs to make, whether I wanted to stay as I was a senior manager at the time, if I wanted to stay leading teams, and that was going to be, my most important criteria in my role, my next role, or, was I open to, going into an individual contributor role where I'm more focused on delivering programs and not so much on having a team. And I ended up choosing to stay in the senior manager leading a team role. And actually, one of the people that had reported to me previously at Groupon recruited for me to come work and be their manager at PlayStation. So it was a really awesome experience that someone, it was very touching that someone that I had worked with previously felt that, I was so effective that they wanted me to manage them again. And it was a good pivot in that I was thinking through, like, what does this mean for me? Where am I going? What are those next steps? I don't think I ever would have thought of to apply to a role at a company like PlayStation. I'm not a big gamer. I know a lot of gamers, and I know a lot of people at CMU are gamers. But it was just a kind of outside of my normal comfort zone. But it ended up being a really great educational experience, learning from a company like that. Going back, like there, I learned again some things that I really loved about being at a company that had a very Japanese business mindset. And there were things that I struggled with in terms of the rate of change. I really like being aggressive and moving quickly. And so I learned that more about myself by having that opportunity at that company. It was very cool to be there over the PlayStation 5 launch during the pandemic, where it was like the hot, topic. Everyone wanted one. So just being a part of that environment was a really amazing experience that I probably wouldn't have experienced otherwise if I hadn't taken some of those risks. Going to that organization or even having the opportunity because I was laid off from my previous company.
Yeah, it makes sense. And how would you say you like built confidence when switching through roles or like going into a new unfamiliar space? And yeah, just any advice.
Yeah, I think that is just a really key point is really understanding what you bring to the table. I'm usually one of, if not the only person that looks like me in the rooms that I'm in all day at work. And that's been true for most of my career. And it actually started at CMU. I came from a very homogeneous community, and going to CMU where people were from all different places, had all different experiences, to me was really exciting. I felt like we could have the best of the best and really have that diversity of opinions and thoughts and perspectives. And that's how you come up with the best solutions. So I think that is something that really helps me build confidence that, like, look what I'm bringing to the table that no one else here has. No one else, has the background that I have, has the experience that I have. They have other equally valuable experiences, but I uniquely can provide, my insight to this problem or my suggestions of how we can resolve this challenge. And that can really help me build that confidence. And I think you feel validated when you see those ideas being successful, or have people above you taking your ideas and agreeing with them or supporting them, and you build that through time, and developing those relationships and trust.
Yeah, makes sense. And last thing before I open the floor to the audience, I do have a few other questions I could ask. But what would you say is like one leadership value or like mindset that you think is the most important and has really stayed with you throughout your like entire journey?
Yeah, I think that one is really just being adaptability and flexibility. I think that's like something that doesn't stand out on a resume sometimes, other than if you really put the context together. But there's no one solution for every problem that's like, oh, I definitely know, I don't like the problems where we already know the answers. Those aren't interesting to me. I want to always be looking for those problems where we're trying to figure out the answers. And to do that, you have to really understand the problem. You have to really understand what the goal is, and then think through, where you've had similar expectations or similar situations. Know when to be prescriptive and say, we have to do this. We have to, set up this situation, or we have to build this component of the program to make it work, and when to be flexible. For example, one of the programs I'm on this week is behind on sending out our status update to our leadership. So figuring out how else do we get them that information or what's another way to do it, because we have these other constraints. So really being open to creating a process, creating a system that helps set your team up for success, but then understanding when you need to be flexible and adapt, because the situations are always changing. You can never predict the people component. The technical component sometimes is much more predictable, but the people component is always changing. And so being able to adjust with that, I think, is really critical.
All right, yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you so much. I do have a few questions that just came in. First of all, does anybody like in here have a question to ask? I know there's a few that came in. Yeah, sure.
What advice do you have adapting to change and switching environments or positions and not losing time? Using as little time as possible when adapting.
Got it. Yeah, were you able to hear that?
I think you were asking for advice on switching environments and kind of ramping up quickly.
Yeah, that was a question.
That's perfect. Um, I think the first thing, and it's funny, I've only been in the role I'm in since November, so almost a year now. So I recently went through this, even though it was an internal move here at Google. And I think the first thing is really level setting on expectations with your stakeholders. So the first thing I usually do when I start a new role is, talk to my leadership, but then also talk to all of the peer groups that I'm going to be heavily involved in. So in my world, that's often, some product managers, some of the engineering and tech leads, sometimes some user design UX folks, and getting a sense of like what's going on now. What are their biggest challenges? Where are their pain points? What are the things that are top of mind for them? And then prioritizing those. So I, usually go, okay, I've learned, an example on this current role. A lot of people told me that a particular report that my team is responsible for was extremely painful to prepare. And so I, got a sense of, okay, why are we doing this report? Who's involved in preparing it? How much time is it taking? Are there ways to automate parts of this report? Do we need to send it this frequently? So really like going through and questioning why are things the way they are, not necessarily saying you have to change them immediately, but really getting a good understanding. So through that exercise, I learned, yes, we need to send the report. We don't need to send it as frequently. We don't need to send it to the same audience. And by reducing the audience, we actually were able to reduce the amount of time it took to prepare because the level of scrutiny had gone down. And we were able to change how we got some of the information for the report. So the report used to take us 2 weeks to prepare, and now it takes us usually about 2 days. So
Yep.
that's a huge win that I was able to establish right away. So I only would have gotten that insight by having those conversations with folks and saying, hey, this is something that I think I can deliver on right away. And then I've built that trust and credibility. And so then they're going to keep bringing me those hard problems and I'll keep having continued success.
That's a great answer. Hopefully that answered your question. Well, anybody else here like
Okay, thank you again for coming and talking to us.
Sure.
As someone who's trying to break into TPM specifically, I know a lot of larger companies sort of raise their own TPMs internally from suites. So how do you, as someone who's been in the field for so long, such as a new master's student or someone who's just started in college, to kind of take this route to try to get into TPM at some point in their career, especially?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is really challenging at every company has their own definition of what the T in TPGM means. At Google, the bar is extremely high. So I'm currently a program manager, not a technical program manager. But I will say in previous roles, I've done almost the exact same work at other organizations, and I was a program manager or technical program manager. So one suggestion might be to think about that you might get some more of the hands-on experience at a smaller organization where they are willing or have that need at the lower levels for the TPGM, the technical program management role. I do acknowledge like the lower levels at places like Google can be very challenging because exactly as you said, they're looking to poach from SWEs. there, to be said also, there is flexibility in that. So there's folks, I've had people ask me, why don't I be a product manager? Or people moving from data science to program management and back and forth. So I don't think I ever expected having the same title as long as I have, even though it's generally shifted a little bit, but I would not be as caught up in the title and more on what's the actual work. So you might be a technical program manager, you might just be a program manager in a role, but doing similar work and getting that experience. The job market is tough these days. So I think going back to being adaptable and flexible, those might be some ways that you gain those skills in other ways. And think that from a technical program management standpoint, a company like Google is going to be looking for you to have the basis of a suite, like that level of knowledge. For me, it's not a question personally of whether I can or can't demonstrate that. It's whether I want to spend my time on that level of technical knowledge versus some of the other components of their job that I actually enjoy a bit more. So I think, build those technical skills, but it may be more challenging. I acknowledge that it may be more challenging to entry level come in with those experiences.
Yep.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, of course.
Just based on your responses, how do you think that sort of line of work in program management has changed, especially in the last few years with like companies implementing AI in their workflows and just compared to like earlier on before all of this came in, and how has your work changed? And
yeah, I absolutely love the changes that are coming because of AI. I take advantage of being in a place like Google that just has all of the training available, and we literally get new tools every single day, which is amazing. And to take advantage of that, I'm always learning. I mean, this was true before AI was moving at the pace that it is today, but I'm taking classes all the time internally here. I'm reading articles, I'm reading books, I'm engaging with conversations with my peers like, hey, Gemini does this today. Hey, Gemini does this tomorrow. And how can we use that? So how can I take advantage of the technical tools that we have here at an amazing company like Google and to make my job better? So how can it help me summarize my notes? How can it help me write, scoring towards our goals? How can it help me write my performance review? So those are things that I'm doing every day, trying out new things, writing status reports, pulling it immediately from notes and transcripts. I think it's just being open that I'm not always going to be the smartest person in the room. I'm not going to know the newest thing, but I can share what I do know, and someone else knows something different. And we're actually having conversations now that companies are holding SWEs accountable to, using AI in their work. How is that going to transform in the technical and program management space? And I won't be surprised if it is incorporated into what folks are being held accountable to. I will say, to me, it's more similar to like using a calculator. We always could do math before we had calculators, but calculators make us faster, more efficient, more accurate. I view a lot of these tools as ways to make me faster, more efficient, and more accurate. They still make mistakes. I assigned the wrong owner to an action item yesterday because Gemini heard the name incorrectly. It happens. But it leads us towards a path where we can spend more of our time actually brainstorming on problems and solving those and less time on the logistics. So I'm fully supportive.
thank you.
You have any other questions in person or? Yeah, so it actually seems that Trisha started the meeting a little bit early, so we only have 3 minutes left. But if we could quickly run through like kind of a dual question, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Sure, okay. I guess first of all, like what was your advice for like recent Tepper graduates with no work experience to land a job at Google? Then also, how much can you expect for yearly compensation for entry, like mid and senior level program managers at Google?
I certainly can't answer this compensation question because I'm not sure, but I'm sure you can look that up online through some tools. I certainly did plenty of research when I was coming to Google at what was available and what I should expect, and it was very different than what I was making. So always do your research with job negotiations. In terms of hints, I would say really look at most of our job descriptions are pretty generic. And actually, when I was hired to Google, not even to a specific job. So really look at what are the qualities that we're looking for in a Googler. And I think this is true at any company, but more so at Google, I've noticed, we're really holding candidates to the company to align to Google values. All this stuff is public. You can look it up. But you're going to be you're going to be evaluated on, how you work in teams, how googly you are, like how friendly and collaborative you are, how are you demonstrating leadership, how are you demonstrating problem solving. All those types of things are the qualities that you're going to be measured against. So as an entry level person, you should be looking at how you're building your resume, how you're building your experiences to demonstrate those. I'm sure you've heard of the STAR, like have good examples, situations, what did you do? What actions did you take? What are the results? And what did you learn from it? I think it's really important to always explain like what you would have done differently now that you know, or, what is that situation again? What did you change in your behavior going forward? I think that continuous learning is a huge part of the culture here and one thing that I really appreciate. So I think there's a ton of information on the website. Definitely encourage folks to spend time there and really think through their experiences they have and how they can apply those to those qualities.
Well, thank you so much for answering. We're at 1 minute, so unfortunately we'll have to wrap up. But quick question, would you be all right if everybody here could get your email or just any contact information that they could reach out to you afterwards?
Sure. I can put it in the chat. It's really easy. It's just my last name. Anything else?
I think that's about it. Thank you so much once again for coming in. And sorry, Trisha wasn't able to stay for it because of her change of plans. But yeah, thank you for talking to us.
You're very welcome. It was such a pleasure chatting with you today.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.